Y'all, this here review contains spoilers. If and you city folk can't handle that, I suggest you scuttle right off back to your big government cookie cutter McMansions while slurping down your dairy-free vegan milkshakes full of baby fetuses. Whatever.
Try anything and you're canceled, bro.
Early on in the latest Texas Chainsaw Massacre sort of sequel thingy, I realized that I was going to have to ignore that it had any connection to that hollowed slice of cinema. It is, of course, director David Blue Garcia. Why is his middle name Blue? Anyway, director Dave Blue Garcia's sequel to the original Tobe Hooper film, now with returning Sally Hardesty, played by actress... the old lady from Mandy. Because, of course, Marilyn Burns is, well, dead. R.I.P. Hope you don't mind us throwing your legacy in the trash. Sorry, it was right there. Yeah, come closer to me. Closer. Closer, you whore. Get your ass over here. Get your ass over here, microphone. Shit, get your fucking ass over here. There you go. Alright, much like the Platinum Dunes variations, this is a pretty slick production. Garcia and DP Ricardo Diaz, both Texas natives, have crafted a pretty picture without giving in to over-stylization. The editing is only ever jumpy or experimental when it needs to be, and despite taking place almost entirely in a Hollywoodized ghost town in Bulgaria, it never feels particularly cheap. It's also just a hair over 80 minutes, and actually I think that's just with credits. I think without credits it's like mid-70s, so if you're still here despite the spoilers, just know that it's an easy enough ride to get through. So with that said, let's dig in to my big takeaways. When it comes to the criticism of themes in horror cinema today, it feels as though there's a disconnect between message and the communication of that message, and it's like those who, for example, proclaim a film to be woke are quick to point out that their frustration lies in the criticisms placed on societal woes or the need to cast a person who doesn't look like them or, whatever. Sometimes it just gets super racist. However, the real issue with these movies, something that, in fairness, those constantly calling woke do sometimes rightfully criticize, is usually a very real but less divisive one. They lay that shit on way too thick, you dig? Just laying that fucking shit on all over that fucking, oh yeah, you like my morals, you little slut. Such is the case with our latest requel thing, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a film with very good and surprisingly moderate intentions, sure to rile the libs in the audience, which simply either doesn't think highly of its audience's intelligence or is way too up its own ass to realize how it comes across.
Behold the joys of late-stage capitalism.
In the opening 15 minutes, we get very direct nods to school shootings, gun rights, gentrification, hipsters, Gen Z, liberals, the California exodus, racism, cops is a systemic ill, the Confederacy, and rolling coal.
He's just a fucking coal roller.
It's a lot, and it's presented in such a ham-fisted way that I can imagine all the quartering-esque neckbeards out there shutting the sucker off before Leatherface even shows up so they can yell at a camera in front of their toy collections. It is, it's a really shitty way to start your film. It does not help that this place does not fucking look like Texas. Now look, I am by no means averse to horror movies with overt social or political themes. I am, after all, the guy who thought that the newest Black Christmas was pretty good. So, if a horror movie wants to treat its message like a butcher knife and stab us to death with that particular implement, then cool beans. The problem is that you then have to try and make the message and the horror coexist. Ironic, considering this is a film with a message that I think is all about coexisting, but much like our land-grabbing central characters, that concept doesn't seem to be at play here on the filmmaking side. But, before I dig into that, I should note that this is actually a problem that kind of goes away. Like, there's still nods and references to the 15 or so modern stereotypes that are set up, but we wind up either getting serviceable follow-through to those setups or pretty standard, well-realized gory violence. So it's with that acknowledgement that I gotta go after this moment.
Try anything and you're canceled, bro.
The "you're cancelled, bro" scene. A moment wherein everyone watching the trailer went retro is immediately followed up with a very direct school shooting flashback. While that aforementioned cancel culture gag is a bit cringe-inducing, left in a vacuum, it's fine enough, and it leads to some truly glorious carnage courtesy of this busload of dumb fucks. Silly, but fun. Unfortunately, it then conflicts with the school shooting element, creating tonal whiplash that is, frankly, just fucking difficult to get right. See, this is our main character, whose name is, oh boy. It's Lila or Leela? I'm gonna say Lila? I'm too lazy and stoned to check that. I'm gonna say Lila. Let's go with Lila. Lila, she's played by 8th grade's Elsie Fisher, and she is, frankly, a great final girl. She's not your stereotypical version of that trope. She looks like an actual teen on account of, well, being an actual teen, and her school shooting backstory is actually, it's pretty solid. Not super well developed, but I mean, it's a fucking school shooting. Like, you get like one shot from it, and that's all you really need. It's a fucking school shooting. To the point, I really wish that they would have cut everything aside from this and the gentrification angle, because those by themselves are both prescient and are more than enough to hold together this thin story. There's really no need to go full hog against hipster Gen Zs and young millennials. There's, no matter how much they deserve it, if only because doing so turns the first stretch of the film into that Steve Buscemi 30 Rock meme.
How do you do, fellow kids?
And fucking throw out Sally too. That character doesn't need to come back, no matter how well Halloween 2018 did. And where someone like fuck, just like she's fucking dead. Just let the fucking character die. Like, dude, like fucking, she could be anybody. Just some chick who like also like if it's a like make it a thing that happens a lot. Like, and then you say like, oh, this fucking broad she was like in the 70s or 80s, one of the people. And then fucking, became a fucking Texas Ranger or whatever the fuck. And then we can fucking kill her off and nobody will give a shit. Anyway, what was I talking about? Where someone like, say, James Gunn is a master of combining biting satirical humor and drama. It's one of those things that you really have to be a brave filmmaker to tackle and a brilliant one to knock out of the park. Garcia is definitely a brave filmmaker, and I'd say even one to keep an eye on. But I wouldn't call him brilliant. Although, you know what? That's not fair to him. Because, to be totally fair, this is more on the writing and producing team, and he was brought in to replace the other directors who got fired. So really, this is a work for hire gig for like an indie filmmaker from Austin. So really, the fucking writer, wait, where's my finger? Right there. This guy? Fuck this guy. What the fuck, guys? Come on. Get somebody better write your fucking scripts. Whatever. In this scene, we get the highly memed moment followed by tons of gory violence while Facebook Live audiences watch on and question whether the whole thing is real. It's a veritable smorgasbord of rad and fucking insufferable. In the midst of this horror show, Lila is thrown to the ground and stares at one of the victims as he dies in front of her, and flashes back to the school shooting she survived after getting shot. Now, the shooting has stayed with her. She has a totally rational fear of guns and is haunted by this moment. She can't even pick up a gun. It's a deadly serious character detail that is so desperately in need of a somber moment so that we feel like the movie's taking it seriously, but it's placed after this bullshit. It's frustrating because it really should work, but it doesn't. Until it sorta does, kinda. See, shortly after the bus massacre, Sally Hardesty's multiverse variant shows up to kick some ass, and where she fails as a Laurie Strode-esque Grand Return legacy character, she succeeds as a sort of secondary foil for Lila. The Say You Know Me scene between Sally and Leatherface is basically a distillation of Halloween Kills' muddled concept of the killer not remembering or caring about the aforementioned legacy character, or in that case characters, distilled into just a few lines of dialogue. So it basically does everything that Halloween Kills tried and kind of fumbled with in like half a scene, which is pretty cool.
I'm the one who got away, and I'm here to make sure you don't. Evil dies tonight!
Of course, they do feel the need to have Sally bleeding out in a heap of trash just blurt out the message of that scene, but fuck it.
Don't run. If you run, he'll never stop haunting you.
This is a film where our leads are literally called gentrifuckers. It is not a subtle piece of cinema. The point of this is, while those so-called woke moments, or I guess reactions to wokeism, really, I don't know, do hurt the film, I think it's a bit unfair to throw the baby out with the bathwater. After all, the only way you're going to get a really solid, back to basics, quality Texas Chainsaw sequel is to set it in the 70s or 80s and basically just redo what came before. As far as the fans go, you shouldn't do that, by the way. That's a bad idea. Leatherface, see, like, you should try something different, and I like that they tried something different here. But you just, if you want to make it a Texas Chainsaw movie, you gotta be more than just, it's set in Texas, but not actually in Texas. I think actually, this is going a little off topic, but I think if you made it like in Texas and you got more of that Texas flavor, you could do the solo Leatherface thing. But I really think he needs the family. I know some people say that the family's overdone. I think he needs the family because Leatherface as a villain is not really sequel material or even main baddie material. He's just some schlubby, unemployed butcher with bad teeth and a predilection for killing young whippersnappers busting into his house. And that's something that's repeated here, minus his very necessary family with our inexplicably superhuman geriatric murderer. And that age kind of makes the whole thing rather laughable, whereas if this was any standalone horror flick, it would all be fine and dandy. Otherwise, he really needs his family at his side instead of just on his face. Give me a cook, give me a hitchhiker, whatever. While family as the driving force behind his rampage is fine, they really are more necessary than ever now that he's so goddamn fucking old. But anyway, when you take out the legacy element, which, you know, tough to do when it's thrown in your fucking face, and accept that there's going to be some pretty aggressive ribbing of Twitter libs here and there, what you're left with is a stupendously gory, streamlined little horror flick. And by the way, I do recognize that the big hurrah character moment for Lila will rub plenty of people the wrong way. I haven't read any reviews yet, but my assumption is that Leatherface, as a metaphor for her trauma and her having to get through her fear of guns to help take him down, will probably lead to plenty of think pieces about conservative values or some bullshit. My takeaway is a bit more generous to the filmmakers. This is a story about getting past trauma and not letting it define you. And vis-a-vis, in order to kill her demons, Lila has to take up arms. While there is a pretty easy gun rights reading there, I believe the more, or like, I guess 2A reading, I believe the more accurate reading, just my opinion, is that she has an obvious hang-up, and dramatically speaking, it just fucking makes sense to leverage that hang-up for the sake of drama. If anything, the film shows a character scared to the point of anxiety attacks from just touching the gun to a character who can accept that the gun itself is not the enemy. It's the person, you know, doing the bang-bang. It's still muddled if you look at it purely from a political lens, and to be fair, the movie instills that natural inclination into the audience, but from my point of view, it's far more empowering than anything else. Plus, like, how many characters relying on guns get fucked up in this movie? Chainsaws are where it's at, bro. And you know where else it's proverbially at? My Patreon, where you too can help me make me help. My Patreon, where you too can help me make more. I'm so high right now, goddamn. My Patreon, where you too can help me make content like this while also feeding my cannibalistic inbred family. Or if you'd like something more than helping me survive while buying copious amounts of Blu-rays, you could also give to the Indiegogo for my next film, Dr. Deathface, the beautiful story of a sex therapist and the man-eating vagina bed that he loves. But hurry, the funding period is up on March 8th. Get yourself a Blu-ray or a producer credit. Treat yourself by giving me money, buckaroo.
So you guys are what, like a cult?
We're idealistic individuals who want to build a better world.
Yeah, that's a cult.
Anyway, I don't really have much more notes on this after one viewing. When you get through these issues, it's really very simple, making it so much more frustrating. Take out the more overt politics, keep what actually helps the characters progress, and focus on exploring and getting fucked up in this little Bulgarian town, and you have something much closer to what made the OG so good. Sure, you don't get the same grainy cinematography or DIY feel, but if we're being honest with ourselves, a super indie shot-on-film Texas Chainsaw sequel is not in the cards. That's one of those life lessons we all have to accept. It's like death and taxes. I'll leave it at this. The beauty of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is its simplicity. While it does have an agenda, that comes second to its interest in being a creepy, intense slice of Texan terror with a dollop of good humor on top. It is also a film about the fear of the other, the encroachment of modern society into a time and place that doesn't want that society. Thematically, this should work, but by focusing so much on fulfilling a legacy, on getting in its fanboy moments,
You're the cook.
and on crafting pseudo-clever dialogue to show just how much it knows how shit-headed its characters are,
Let's.
and on, I guess, getting those sweet, sweet tax incentives for a movie you could easily shoot on a smaller budget, well, it just sort of falls short. However, the last hour or so is a fair bit of fun. The sister characters have enough development, albeit sometimes misapplied, to keep them engaging. And while gore isn't on the forefront of my mind when it comes to this particular franchise, damn, this is some of the best CGI-enhanced gore I've seen from a recent horror production. Is this a bad film? No, I don't think so. In fact, I think it's a pretty good horror movie. Is it the worst in this franchise? No, I can't say that either. Leatherface exists. It's fine. Perhaps even pretty good if you can just accept its strongest flaws. And while that's not what the fans want, we're also never going to get a second dose of the original's magic, nor anything as delightfully punk rock as Hooper's sequel.
You're my fave.
This is no Evil Dead, despite Fede Alvarez on story and producing duties, but it's a good enough horror flick with just as many flaws as plenty of others we accept as fun diversions. This one just has a heavier load to carry, and I'm not about to shit all over a bunch of Texans for that alone, because they have guns and they scare me. Go watch a fucking movie.
Y'all have a nice day now.
Thank you.
Gentry fuckers.